Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the TheAspieWorld podcast. What is going on? It's been good. I've been enjoying these episodes, interviewing some awesome people, and today I've got a guest back. I think me and this guy did a podcast last year, I think, or the year before. Anyway, really awesome. We're here to talk about OCD this time because I think it's a big thing that nobody ever talks about, especially when you're autistic and you have OCD versus autism OCD, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. So without further ado, this is Max J. Green. You can find him online at Max J. Green. He's an actor, YouTuber, influencer, does everything, the whole 9 yards. The guy's awesome. And he's a really nice bloke. So, Max, what's going on?
Oh, well, just thank you for having me on that. Obviously, it's always nice to sort of come back and talk about those sort of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to connect, isn't it? And it's been a while. I think we've been trying to plan this podcast for about 6 months.
I know, right?
So
it's been just crazy the amount of time that's gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. So one of the things, and this episode's all about, I want to talk about, autism, because me and Max both are autistic, right? So, but we also have OCD, but our OCD is separate kind of to the autism part in a way where if you have autism-based obsessive compulsion, it's kind of doing things because you enjoy doing them, right? Putting things in order and blah, blah, blah. But then we also have the OCD component, which is like a mental health kind of thing where we do the things because we are terrified of something bad happening, right? So we're doing them reluctantly. We don't have enjoyment from doing the things that we're forced to do, right? So that being said, me and you kind of bonded over this because we had the same experience. I think I put out a TikTok. Do you remember? Like I put out a TikTok, wasn't it? But running and coming off the pavement and which foot went where.
Absolutely.
And that's where you and I kind of like really kind of was like, wow, I get it. And you know what's funny, Max? I was in a YouTube event for the Labour Party in the UK. They were hosting the Labour conference, something like that, some fringe festival event. So it was kind of cool. So I went there and I was hanging out with Sadiq Khan and some other people. Anyway, among them was Alison, who was or is the managing director of YouTube, and she was a fan of my work. So I was like, oh, so I got talking to Alison, and she said, one of the topics that I don't see anybody talk about is OCD. I said, oh, it's really interesting because me and my friend Max, blah, 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 and I spoke about you and what we did. She was like, cool, I'd love to see another episode on that. So this is kind of cool. This is kind of based on the fact that Alison said, look, I don't see this on YouTube. She's the managing director. So I was like, it's time to talk and break them up. So Max, talk to us a little bit about OCD and how it, you don't have to talk about the in-depth details because, look, some of those things can be embarrassing, right? Because I feel super embarrassed sometimes. I'm like, I have to do these things, even for my partner and my family, because you feel like an idiot, right?
Absolutely.
But talk to me a bit about like how it controls your life, how it impacts you, and some of the things that you like, how you feel about it.
It's really weird, right? Because when I was growing up, the first OCD obsession I had was, funny enough, poison. Now, not that I was obsessed with poison, I was obsessed with the thought of being poisoned. And it all stemmed through when I was at school, there was a cut down tree and I was sat on it and there was a mushroom. My brother said, well, you better go wash your hands because it could be poisonous. And then from that point, it was just petrified of being poisoned to the point where my mum would have to bite bits of my food before I ate it because I was scared that someone was trying to poison me. Yeah, it's almost laughable, right? Because it's like, oh, mum, if you sort of deck over and die, then I know not to eat it, but it's sort of terrible in that sense.
I don't mean.
I won't eat that now.
It was a reassurance you're after, though, right? It was reassuring that it was fine, yeah.
And you're so dependent from that on other people. But it did evolve, then it was a weight obsession, so I didn't want to be big. And then when I got more older, it then went into the stage of having to do things because I somehow managed to... Well, that's what OCD does. It manages to make you, even though it's not true, you sort of believe you have a butterfly effect, So if I don't do this 4 times, or if I don't do that 8 times, if I don't do it exactly right, something bad will happen. And of course, it starts off with 4, but me and you both know to get it exactly right, to end up doing 100 times.
Yeah, 100 times.
But it's only that sequence of, that one time.
Get it right.
4 times.
Yeah.
And you're sort of happy. And I always say, the thing is, as you started off in the intro, it's brilliant because autism, as you say, it's very logical. If something goes wrong, you get upset about it. It takes autistic people maybe a bit longer to process that. And that's the thing that people can't get their heads around. And it's like, well, I just process it a bit longer.
Yes.
But, if you try, for instance, if something disrupts your routine, it's a very logical human response to be upset about it, because it's like,
it's not what you expected, right? So
exactly, it's very logical. But as you said, trying to do an OCD, for instance, to some of my, even to this day, my dog passed away a few years ago. There's a massive photo of him on the wall. I still stroke the photo 4 times and say, see you later, I love you, see you later, I love you. And if someone stood there, I will literally wait until they're gone, because
you have to do it, right? And you don't want to do it in front of somebody because they're going to think you're nuts, right? Yeah.
They just think, what is this madman doing?
Yeah.
And the worst my OCD got was, I had to go on medication for it in the end. And I'm sort of an advocate and not. I think it's really important to get that right balance and that right
percent, 100%.
But that's because every time I crossed the road, I'd have to look 100 times left and right. My right foot had to leave the pavement. If that didn't happen, I'd have to do all that again. I would have to run consistently to my friend's house, which was about 5 minutes away, so it wasn't too long. But if there was a drain board I saw, I'd have to jump on it, look left and right 100 times on a drain board for no reason whatsoever.
Yep.
Right foot would have to come off.
Yep.
And every time I crossed the road, obviously you then have another curve. So you have to
do the same process.
And I had kids coming up to me going, why can't you just cross the road? And I'd always say OCD people generally are very good at hiding, but it does get, I got to that, didn't where it's unavoidable.
Yeah, I do the same when I'm on a jog, and I jog all the time. I haven't jogged for a couple of weeks because I'm just recovering from some surgery, but jogging, coming off the pavement, I have to do it like for my right foot off, and if my right foot comes off the pavement, then it has to go back on the pavement with the right foot. But if I do it wrong, I have to do it 2 times with the left foot to balance out the fact that I hadn't done it right. And then, I'll, because I'm running, you're kind of going at a speed, right? So then I'll do it wrong, and then I'll have to go back, and people will just look at me like, what is this guy doing? So what I do is I'll pretend to look at my watch like, oh yeah, I'm just doing something with my timing. And because that's what you do, because otherwise people are going to be like, this guy's absolutely bonkers. And do you know, Max, 2 things you picked up on. One is that we know it's ridiculous. Logically, both you and I are both very intelligent people. We're full-grown adults. We have responsibilities. We know what we are doing is ridiculous, and logically it doesn't make any sense. Nobody's going to kill anybody if we don't cross the road or like this. We can't control it. It's almost like a disease that takes hold of you. It's like kind of saying like, hey, I know I don't want to be out of breath, but I've got asthma. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know I don't want my skin to be itchy, but I've got eczema. It's like, I know it's stupid to scratch my skin, but I have to do it. Like, it's a compulsion. And the other thing,
that's probably the best honestly, that's probably the best explanation I've ever heard. With you're dead right. When you got chicken pox, all you want to do is itch, and it's like you're not meant to, but
you can't help it. Yeah,
and I always put it down to as well. You do it because for the OCD part, you do it because it relieves you of that sort of guilt.
The bit, exactly. And the thing is, like, it splinters off into something else, which I'll talk about in a second. But initially, it's kind of like, you say it starts off like 1 time, and then you have to do it 2 times. Then it ends up being 1,000 times to do something over and over again. Like I used to do this thing with the towel where I had to flip the towel 3 times to make sure the tag landed on the right-hand side so I could put it on the towel rack the right way, right? And make sure it was precisely even. And my girlfriend got so annoyed at this, she ended up cutting the tags off the towel so that I couldn't do this. And that was quite fascinating because she took the control away from me. I had it. You would think I'd go into a spiral of kind of like, but what happened was I said, well, I can't complete this one. It's out of my control. It's kind of the universe's issue. And then that actually helped that one. That one disappeared. That was like, holy shit. But this is what happens. This is the worst part of it, right? And you're going to, I think we privately spoke about this, and this is what the worst part of it for me is. You wash your hands and you said, do you know what? Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to control my hands. I'm going to wash my hands once, wring them off, dry them, and that's it. I'm not going to do the whole system thing. OCD hasn't got a hold of me today. And then that becomes the new OCD. Wash my hands, turn the tap off, dry my hands. It's like a horrible vine that just grows. And then it becomes this thing. I've got to do that right because I'm not going to do OCD. She ended up doing it 3 times to get it right to not be OCD about it. And that is it. And so it grows and grows. Like no matter how much you try to say, okay, today's not the day. Like there's this one where in the shower I have to squeeze the squeegee thing. I have to get it completely perfectly in a ball and then squeeze it and wring it out 3 times and then hang it back on the drying rack thing when I'm in the shower, and I have to say something. But then I was like, that happened because I didn't want to say something else in the shower when I went in. It was just the most bizarre thing. And what happened?
Completely relate to that because I started with the taps. I started taking photos because, you know, I was in a rush in the morning and I was like, I'm running late every day.
Did I? Yeah.
It's because I'm checking the taps, you know, like 100 bloody times. So
yeah.
What I decided to do was I'm not going to do that now. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a photo.
And then that becomes...
Yeah, I ended up having honestly, I went through my phone near Christmas and I had over 100 photos of taps. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, it's just, and it gets bonkers and you're like, but that becomes the thing. And do you know something else you tapped on? The mental process that's going on. I want to try and explain this a little bit. We know it's bonkers and bizarre, but also it feels like we are never worthy of anything going right in our lives. Yeah. You don't feel like you are owed kindness from the universe or God or whoever, right? So you do these things to keep them happy so that you can just be in the back and not have a hard life, right? And if that's what's going on in your head. You're believing that if you're and you'll feel guilty. If you feel happy about something, you're guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, because you feel like you should be persecuted for something. Like this is what OCD does. It makes you believe that you aren't worthy of anything going right. And if something does go right, then something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think I've said to you, like when we personally chat, I find the time I don't do my OCD as much is when I'm depressed because it's like,
yes,
you know,
it's the last thing. Yeah, because the depression takes over. That was the second thing I was going to say to you. You know, yeah, exactly. Like, why not? Why would I even bother? You know, decease me or whatever. One of the interesting things is, and this is the dark part of it, right? And I just warning viewers and listeners, this is going to be a bit of a sensitive part to talk about, but I want to talk about it. There was a time, it happened twice, once in 2020 and once pretty recently, where my OCD gets so bad, like it always gets worse when you're anxious, right? When you're worried about something, if you've got a big event coming up, or if you've got a big work meeting coming up, or something's happening, right? Or maybe a wedding or something, my OCD starts to get worse. Or if I'm having a stressful time in the house with the kids or my partner, the OCD gets worse and worse, right? I don't know why, it just intensifies. But it gets to a point where it becomes so unmanageable and disrupts your life so much that I feel like I just wish I was dead, you know? And that's really sad because I never want to commit, you know, an act like that. And I don't want to not exist. I love life. I believe I'm here and God put me on this planet to do like really good work. But I have this horrible, like, it drives you to a dark corner, right? And you go, what am I doing? Like, I can't do this anymore. There's only so much I can take. I physically can't leave the house because I'm having to wring a towel 16,000 times before leaving the house. And the day's gone. You know, I've literally missed out on going to events. I missed out on going to... I bought Busted tickets, right, to go see Busted with my partner. We ended up didn't go because, like, I just couldn't get everything right before going. And so I was terrified of leaving the house thinking that we're just going to car crash or, you know, a terrorist attack or something ridiculous. So, but then but that's what I mean. It controls your life, doesn't it? And it kind of like, it becomes the boss of you. And then you're like, and that's when I was like, and I had got some really dark. Medication does help a lot because you don't want those thoughts, right? And they're negative, intrusive thoughts. I do a lot to make sure that those things don't happen. But you understand, right? Like that's how it gets to some crazy points.
It's hard, right? Because I always remember even having friendships, and a big part of OCD are those traumatic sort of things that happen. Sorry, it's part of OCD are those traumatic thoughts. But then you feel bad for thinking them, right? So I had friendships which have sort of disappeared because I've then said to someone, you know, trying to relieve myself of guilt because I thought something bad, you know.
Yeah.
I thought the other day I might not want to be your mate anymore. And they'd be like, and I'll be like, I know I want to be your mate. And I'm not saying it, but I just want to tell you because I feel bad for thinking it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But they don't obviously get it because, again, it's like, you know, what are you on about? You know, that makes no sense.
It's like mind Tourette's, right?
Yeah, you're trying to relieve yourself, of
Yeah.
that guilt, and try and be like, I don't know, trying to be honest. And it can massively backfire because people don't get it. I remember, especially going through puberty, not to get too personal in situations, but yeah, that's when your mind is more curious, and you go out and you look on the web and stuff. And I remember, during that stage of puberty, and if I'd see something, I'd have to go and tell my mum about it. And what an embarrassing
situation that would have to be.
Awkward situation, because I felt bad for seeing it. I had to relieve the guilt, had to tell my mum, who didn't really want to hear any of this,
No, exactly. She doesn't care. She's like, okay, man, you keep it to yourself, dude.
Yeah. And it was difficult. And yeah, it becomes exhausting.
That's it. I was going to say, it takes its toll on you as a person. So it's not just the actually doing the things. It's not just feeling like, oh, I'm an idiot for doing these things, but it also then exhausts you, and then you're worn down, right? And like, the spoon theory where, they say like you only have so many spoons in a day, right, to hand out. So by the end of the day, autistic individuals have like no spoons left, right?
Yeah.
And so they could just be triggered like that. OCD just zaps those spoons away. You have no spoons. You start off your day, at the first OCD pattern you have to do, you got no spoons left. You've exhausted your energy. Yeah. And, I think you're absolutely bang on. That, when I was a kid, when I was really little, I'd have OCDs about tapping light switches, turning lights on and off, tapping everything in the room before going out, that kind of stuff. And they kind of dissipated as I got older because different things had to kind of occupy your mind, right? Because you're learning and growing and all this stuff. But it wasn't until a friend of mine said that when she was little, she had an OCD where she had to touch wood all the time. So she had a little giraffe, which is a wooden giraffe she used to carry around with it. And I said to her, I was like, oh, I would have just made like a wooden ring to wear because then I'd always be wearing it, right? Which is a cool idea.
Wow, yeah, really good idea.
Yeah, it's cool. I took that on. I have to touch wood all the fucking time now. Like, I took on her childhood trauma of such a and like you're saying, it just triggers something in you. Like, and your mind kind of like, it's like a seed, right? And then it's like a disgusting black seed that wants to just infect your mind. And it could be the craziest thing you could ever. So like, I've got a Tesla now. I drive a Tesla, and the dashboard of the Tesla is actually made out of wood. Thank God, right? So there's like a wooden stripe on the dashboard of the Tesla, which is helpful. Anyway, Matt, this has been insightful. Any tips on how you manage and navigate it?
I always say, I try when I'm doing my OCD, I always have that, because I always explain OCD as like another voice, and it's my voice. It is my voice. It's not like a person going, but it's my voice going, you need to do that, otherwise something might happen. Yeah. And I always try and just say to people, try and make your other sense of, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. That always helped me. One thing I also helped as well, and honestly, it did help me quite a lot, because my mum and dad saw what it was doing to me. I was up at 12 o'clock at night most nights doing OCD stuff.
Yeah.
One of them was unloading the dishwasher, which my mum didn't mind. She quite liked.
How was somebody doing that?
Yeah. But they always said, look, if something bad happens, it's on me. Because they have how logical it is, So that I always remember my last night of doing these extreme OCDs, and to be fair, I was on medication as well. So I think that helped a lot. But my dad said, don't do anything. Don't do anything tonight. He said, I promise you, nothing bad will happen. Just don't do it. Now, the double-edged sword of that is if something did, then it's
it reinforces your initial negative thought rate.
Exactly. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword, but just having that person to chat to and go, look, don't do it. Don't do it. No, nothing will happen. Just having that reassurance from somebody and trusting someone enough to talk to about it, I think really helps.
I think you're absolutely right, because the only thing I was going to add in was, actually the only thing that really helped me was if it's getting really bad, I just say to my girlfriend, I say, look, I'm having a really bad OCD time at the moment, and I'm going to explain the ridiculous embarrassment of it to you, so you can see how silly it sounds. And then she says, and she'll do that. She'll say, look, everybody will take the responsibility for what happens. It's not all on you. And it kind of did help. But just letting her know that I'm doing these things allowed me to relax in it, because you're doing it more because people don't know about it. It's weird. It's a weird thing, right? You're kind of hiding it, but when it's out in the open, it has less hold on you, right? And I guess it comes down to the old adage of, a problem shared is a problem halved, and I think that does work. So I think talking therapy is probably one of the best ways to go. Medication excessively helps, and some really good medication on it, which is pretty amazing. But it is difficult, right? And Max, it's so brave of you to want to come on here and have this conversation with me, because I don't talk to anybody about it. Like, nobody, just you.
I know, right? I know it's hard to, because people just don't get it. Like, they commonly think, I'm Monica, our friends, and you commonly hear, well, everyone's got a bit of OCD, and I always think, well, that's just like saying everyone's a bit pregnant. It's like, you're rough.
You either are, you're not.
Yeah, it's, and I'll get people say it to make you feel better.
Yes, because they're trying to not that. What do they? They're
validate and trying to understand how you function,
but they're trying to normalize the situation, right? Yeah, it does the exact opposite. You're like, well, you have no idea. You just disregarded my extreme issue. They have no idea, because if you said, look, this could drag me to death, he would stop them in their tracks, right? They would never say, oh, we're all a bit like that. You know what I mean? Like, nobody is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's
like, honestly, it's the equivalent of being in hospital. Someone's like on their deathbed, and you just don't know everyone's on their deathbed, aren't they, really? You're like, what?
What are you talking about? Yeah. It's like, this is my situation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Your leg hanging off, and you're like, what? Like, we're all a bit like, how we? Yeah, it is mad, and it's kind of like you feel invalidated. Then you feel like people don't understand what you say. They're not getting it, and then you're like, why did I just fucking bother saying that? You're like, oh my god. But it is what it is. Max, look, it was great talking to you again, dude. I'd love to do more videos on this. I think maybe we should do a video talking about some of the more in-depth kind of ways that we have helped our OCD, rather than, because we've explained now a little bit more about the in-depth and how it affects us and the feeling of it. I'd just like to point out that if anybody is feeling these impacts and you feel alone, leave me a comment in these videos, or message me or Max on any of our socials. And I guess we'll be glad to talk about it. You can even send me an email, TheAspieWorld@gmail.com, if you want to talk about it, because it's hard. I know what it's like when you don't have anyone to talk to and you're having OCD trauma. Like, it's nuts. So, Max, I think we should totally organize another one. We'll plan it and then get it done for the spring sometime, if that's cool with you.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back and talk about it more. And just to back up what you said, if anyone ever wants to get in touch, and just, again, as you said earlier, problem shared, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just one of those things that if you are dealing with it and you feel kind of like you want to speak to somebody, just reach out. I guess it's just that's the best thing to do. So, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you're listening on a podcast, you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe, because I can see you guys listening and not subscribing, so do it. Same with YouTube, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you find this important enough to help somebody, please share this information on social media any way you want, or download it and share it with people on your phone. I don't care how you do it. This information has to get to people, because we want to help as many people as possible. Thank you so much for joining us, Max. It's been amazing. I'm going to leave a link to Max's social media in the footnotes of this podcast episode and in the description of the videos here. But if you're really interested and you can't find it, comment to me and I'll tag Max in your comment. All right? Max, thank you so much.
Thank you.